Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Hansel Porras Garcia. I'm a filmmaker and the Oolite Art Cinematic Program Manager, and it is truly exciting to welcome you to our first international online conversation on film. I'm going to ask you to please leave your name and the country you're joining from in the chat, and feel free to share your questions in either English or Spanish, as they will be answered in both languages. Thank you again. Thank you so much for all the people that are connecting right now. Today, we have the honor of being joined by acclaimed Spanish filmmaker Isabel Coixet. Isabel is a filmmaker and writer, and her work has been recognized with multiple Goya Awards, and she received the National Film Award of Spain in year 2020, the country's highest honor in cinema. In 2015, she was also named Knight of the Order of the Arts and Letters by the French Ministry of Culture for her contribution to the arts and culture. Her filmography includes Things I Never Told You, which I love, My Life Without Me, The Secret Life of Words, Elegy, The Bookshop, and Elisa y Marcela, that you can watch on Netflix, actually. And she will be talking today about that film. Her most recent film Tres Adioses, Three Goodbyes, recently screened also at the Miami Film Festival. Before we begin, I also want to briefly introduce you to Oolite Arts for those of you who don't know what Oolite Arts is. Oolite Arts is a nonprofit organization founded by Eli Schneiderman in 1984 with the mission of supporting visual artists in South Florida. Oolite Arts provides studios, residencies, exhibitions, and funding to help artists, while also offering art classes, cinematic programs, and community initiatives that connect the public to the arts. Exhibitions and programs at Oolite Arts are made possible with support from John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs, the Cultural Affairs Council, and the Miami-Dade Mayor and Board of County Commissioners, the Florida Department of State Division of Arts and Culture, the Florida Arts Council, the Jorge M. Perez Family Foundation at the Miami Foundation, the City of Miami Beach Department of Tourism and Cultural Development, Office of Cultural Affairs, and the Miami Beach Mayor and City Commissioners. Also, the Collective Circle and She Collective members, and additional support by the Walgreens Company. Over the years, Oolite Arts has expanded its understanding of what visual arts mean. And therefore, around 9 years ago, Oolite created the Cinematic Residency Program, which is designed to support emerging local filmmakers in the creation of their first feature film, which has to be micro-budgeted. The residency provides artists with cash grants, studio space, mentorship, and professional development opportunities to help bring their films to life. And actually, atentos todos, the next open call for the cinematic residency will run from June 1st through July 31st. For the first time, filmmakers from Broward, Palm Beach, Monroe, and of course, Miami-Dade counties are eligible to apply. Applicants are required to have at least the first 30 pages of their scripts completed in order to apply. And the selected filmmaker will receive $50,000 to produce their micro-budget feature film, along with additional support throughout the process and the residency. And I also want to remind everyone that films created through the Oolite Art Cinematic Residency are currently available on several platforms. So please take the time to discover them. We have Mountains by Monica Sorel on Movie. We have Luri by Edson Yin on Prime Video. You have my film, Febrero, on Vimeo on Demand. You can also watch Sunnyland by Sabi Medina on Prime Video, Falling Fruit by Chris Molina on Tubi, and we have The Old Man and the Parrot that is currently on Festival Run. So it's time. You know why we're here for. We are receiving Spanish filmmaker Isabel Coixet. And one of the reasons I was especially excited to invite Isabel today is because her work feels deeply connected to the spirit of independent filmmaking. As a woman working in Spain's film industry, Isabel has continuously had to reinvent herself and find ways to make her voice heard and to make films, while also remaining very deeply committed to her voice and her vision. Throughout her career, she has moved across different scales of production, different budgets, while also maintaining a very, very personal cinematic voice. So, without further ado, let's welcome our guests. But before doing that, let's watch the trailer of the film she will be discussing today, Elisa y Marcela.
Querida Marcela, 4 semanas, 3 días y 9 horas me separan de la última vez que pude olerte.
Querida Elisa, hay días en los que me imagino a tu lado mientras escribes.
Esto es real, ¿verdad? No es un sueño.
¿Quién era esa, la que te ha acompañado?
De la escuela. Su tía es la directora.
Y como te importa tanto tu educación, tu madre y yo hemos decidido que vayas interna a un colegio de Madrid. ¿A dónde vas?
¡Déjame! ¡Suéltame! Tenemos que seguirles el juego. Fingir que somos como todo el mundo. ¿Sabes lo que tenemos que hacer?
Ego conjungo vos in matrimonio, in nomine Patris, et Filis, et Spiritus Sanctis. Amén.
Amén.
Podríamos conocer a tu marido.
¿Pero por qué se mete en la vida de los demás?
Vocês duas estão decididas em nome do governo português.
La cárcel está bien. Lo que no está bien es allá afuera. Y somos un fenómeno de feria.
¡Abre la puerta!
Y no hay escapatoria.
Si eres un hombre, demuestra.
Se lo ruego, no me haga esto.
¿Y ahora qué va a pasar?
Welcome to Oolite Arts, Isabel Coixet.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Hansel.
Hi, Isabel. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being here. Finally. We're talking about films and how to make films with low budgets and with any budget at all. Or we're just doing this because our residency, again, it's focused on micro budget filmmaking, and we want to introduce people to the way of making films this way. And since you have a lot of experience doing that and working across several production scales and budgets, we wanted to invite you. So again, thank you so much. And I actually have a first question for you. I remember when I talked to you about this program, and I mentioned the 50Ks and the filmmakers had to stick to that amount to complete the films. Your first reaction was, okay, that's possible, that's doable. And I wanted to ask you, how is that possible?
Well, I have to say, as you know, I've been making films for quite a lot of time, more than half of my life. And I went through everything. I did my first 2 short films with, nothing. Then I did my first feature film was held by at the time in Spain, they have grants for first films who are quite important. And I was able to do my first film. But then in my second film, I had 4 times less of the budget of the first film. I've been through never studio films. I never did the studio films, but almost there. But also I've done documentaries with 2 people in the crew and 1 month in the desert in Uzbekistan. I think one of the reasons why I survive in this world is because I adapt. I always see myself like those these fishes who are like eels. They swim like that and they adapt, and that's what I've done. And also I've done it in order to do what I want, but also I've done it because I love it. I know everybody wants to do the $20 million film and the 50, and then you see the careers of filmmakers and you see a person who starts with a low budget film, then let's say One of the cases for me, who's fascinating is, for instance, a filmmaker like Steven Soderbergh. It has a first film with almost nothing, really, a very low budget film. He won in Cannes. And after that, he did like a humongous budget film, Kafka, who nobody ever seen. And then the guy, it's a very intelligent guy, say, okay, I'm gonna do like big Hollywood films. And then 2 years ago, he did this film with a phone, with a phone and one of those GoPro cameras. And I know there's a race of filmmakers. I think I belong to that race who were able to do that, and because also it's fun. Having said that, okay, 50K, it's doable, but in order to be doable, you have to write something who has a very simple structure in terms of production. I'm not saying simple in terms of context or meaning, but you have to invest in the most important things, in having a really strong script with a strong concept and having like really fucking good actors, because you can have a DP with no experience. You can have a production designer who doesn't know what he's doing, he or she or whatever. But you have to have like really, truly good actors. Or maybe it's a film with no actors. Maybe it's a film with landscapes and a voiceover. Maybe it's a film like, that this Italian filmmaker I love, Gianfranco Rossi, who does these films with very long shots and the volcano is, exploding. And he does them with no money, but a lot of time. There are multiple formulas to being a filmmaker, but always, if you have that kind of money, think about something you can do with that. And for me, that's the key.
And speaking of, you mentioned adaptability. What happens when you have an idea already, like a concept, an idea, characters, story, that might be a little bit more expensive, but you have to work with that budget? Like how is that adaptability process? How has worked for you, and what's your advice on that for first-time filmmakers, like working on something like that, like this?
One of the reasons I choose Elisa y Marcela for this is because Elisa y Marcela is a low budget film who was, later bought by Netflix. Of course, I didn't see any money from Netflix. But the thing is, this wasn't a Netflix film. This was a story I tried to do for ages. And we start like, okay, we're gonna do, like a period piece with lots of horses and a historical reconstruction. I start with that, and then little by little, everybody refused to produce the film. I was like very, I really wanted to do the film in black and white, and that was a no. So we start with a budget of, let's say, 5 million euros or 5.5 million dollars, and then every time someone from some part of the financing was going down, we were like stretching the thing, and we start with a 7-week shoot, and then we end like doing the film in 3 weeks. And yes, I guess in that process I was sacrificing a lot of things, but one of the things I didn't was, I want to tell the story, and I want to tell it like I want to do a real love story, and I want to have like these two actresses. The actresses, Natalia de Molina and Greta Fernandez, were amazing, and they stuck with me with even if the film was growing smaller and smaller. And I try to tell the story with, less locations and less horses. We have one horse, and that horse is,
Wow.
yeah. And originally the story they start in Galicia, then we're supposed to shoot in Portugal, and then we're supposed to shoot in Argentina. The Argentina part, no, the Argentina part in the movie is like 1 hour from Barcelona. In the Portugal, we did it in Galicia, and the rest we did it in a place nearby Barcelona and in Galicia.
You have
So
to find your ways.
yeah, you have to find a ways. Okay, the ideal is okay. It's Portugal. We go to Lisbon. We do that. Well, that was impossible. So we managed. I went. I took pictures of all the real places, and we try to accommodate things. But I don't feel the film suffers for it. I think you stop with the most important, the essential things. What's the essential thing is wow, this is a couple of two women getting married in 1901 in Galicia, not the most progressive region in Spain at that time. And how these two women had this idea of one of them getting transforming herself in a man, and how they fought for their love, and that's the essential, and I think it's in the movie.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you also in this process of distribution, because like independent cinema, the stories are very personal. Usually, the films are very personal for the directors and such. And then there's a process of navigating distribution, navigating other people watching your films, not only audiences, but people who actually are able to put your film out there. And the same with production companies that sometimes request something from the filmmaker, and sometimes in this personal project then becomes something else. So how have you navigated that process in the production part of it, with production companies who are willing to give you money to produce a film, but then you have to be willing to give up something maybe, and also in the distribution part of it, that also like the editing process usually changes because of the distribution company.
I learned to say no. It's one of the things I'm most proud of is I learned to say, listen, no. In the case of Elisa and Marcela, the pressure to do the film in color was like, every day I had like 10 emails like saying, why you don't, and that will be much easier in terms of selling the film to whatever, or having it in the in the cinema, and I was like, no, I always saw this film in black and white, maybe because the first image I have of this film is the real wedding picture, and in my head it was like, I want to. And also I think in period films, black and white really helps you to go there and to immerse yourself in the story. And I have to say, in this case, one of the things I fought for was, okay, when they tell me, no, Netflix maybe wants to distribute it, but then if we do it in color, it's like, I'm going to do it in black and white. And probably, the price would have been different if it was in color. And one of the things also, it was, okay, I want the film in a movie theater. Okay, then it will be Netflix. I know it will be seen in all these countries Netflix has, but I want the film in a movie theater, at least in Spain. I mean, I think it's important, and it was important for me. And I think It's it's true. People from all over the world have seen it in Netflix, but it's another experience, and it's a film. I thought about Elisa y Martela in a film for the big screen, and when you see it in a big screen, you really get it. But you also you're well, I'm very aware of we're living now, and people doesn't have the time. They want to be in their sofas and their comfy seats, checking an Instagram and watching a film. Uh, and I can understand that, but nobody will convince me this is better than watching it in a big screen.
Yeah, definitely. Films are made for the big
And
screen.
when I learned one of the things I've been in this, I was the president of the jury of the Cannes Series Festival, who was like 2 weeks ago. And when you see some series, like I think they are better on the on a TV, but when you see some stuff, in a big screen, it's like you're much more there. And
Yeah, and the story becomes bigger than you in a sense, and that relationship is really
you're
beautiful.
present.
Exactly.
And being present is probably one of the most rewarding experiences. And also being present when you're directing a film,
Hmm.
because and one of the things I'm addicted to my phone like everybody else, but one of the rules I have in my films is I don't have the phone when I'm directing. I don't. I don't take from time. Okay, at the end of the shoot, maybe I take some pictures of the actors, maybe in rehearsals. But you have to be present, and in order to be present, forget your phone. That's my advice for young filmmakers, for all filmmakers too.
Speaking of advices, and I want to leave you with this question before moving to the case study of Elisa and Marcela that you will do later. You mentioned that it's important to say no, but I'm wondering how would like what advice would you have for first time filmmakers, because I feel it's harder to say no when you're a first time filmmaker, and you usually, like, because you want your film out there, you're usually just giving up on so many things, and it's really hard to look back and see your film and understanding that some of the decisions of that film do not belong to you. So in that sense, yes, I feel I understand the saying no part, but also like for a first time filmmaker, how to navigate that. And I leave you with that.
One of the one of the big virtues to being a filmmaker is we are very stubborn. We want our ideas, the things we wrote, we want them, played by actors and lighting by directors of photography, and in a screen, big or small. And it's very, in my first film, one of the things I regret the most is watching the film and seeing the decisions I took at the time. They weren't mine because I didn't believe enough in myself. And making other people's mistakes is horrible.
Yes.
And one of the things also you have to remember is nobody knows shit. Nobody, probably someone more experienced will come and will tell you something. And maybe the first draft of your script, you pass it to people, and then people tell you things. But nobody really knows anything. And when sometimes I remember, you send the script to someone you trust, and then the answer you have is like they don't get it, and they are not people can say, the people, they can have opinions, but opinions are not the truth, and opinions are not, the essence, what you want to say. And I don't, I know, there are a bunch of people who tell you, no, you have also, once you have made the film, you have, you have to show it to people and take notes and maybe change the editing. In my experience, and it's a long experience because I've done 16 feature films. Every time I show the film to people and I have, let's say 15 different opinions, they never help me. I know, the other day I was discussing exactly this thing with a very, very, very experienced director, someone who has done things for, like, half of the chapters of Twin Peaks and House of Cards. She's an incredible, brilliant director of series. And well, she was very, very honest. And she said exactly the opposite. And it's like, well, maybe for you was helpful. It was never helpful for me.
Wow. Okay.
I know.
Okay. Well, I'll leave you now with your audience so you can have this moment to kind of walk us through the process of making Elisa and Marcela. For those of you who haven't seen the film, it's on Netflix, so please wait until this ends and then go watch it right away. Again, thank you so much, and I'll be back. I'm going to be collecting all the questions in English and Spanish from the chat, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. So thank you so much, Isabel.
Okay. Well, Elisa Marcela is a film I've done because one day I saw a picture, a wedding picture of dated in 1901, and I realized one of the people in the picture there were two women. It wasn't obvious, but I was very, very curious how these two women got married, how that happened, and I started, digging in the story. That was probably 10 years before starting to make the film. At that time, when I was, collecting like academic studies about them, how it was possible these two women got married in a church by a bishop, and what's the mystery between Elisa and Marcela, no? I was, probably naively convinced there was a story of for probably the first marriage between two women in like official marriage of two women in the history of mankind. There was like lots of versions about what happened, how they end in Lisbon in jail. There was also versions about one of them had a child. That child was to prove, in a way, the other person was a guy. So, I was fascinated by the story. There was a very serious study of a history professor in the University of Santiago de Compostela, called Narciso de Gabriel. He was very helpful. He gave me all the years of study of that case. But there's a moment, as a filmmaker, you have to to choose, tell the truth, tell a version of the truth, tell their story how you see it, and of course I choose to tell the story how I imagine it. I never pretend that's what happened with these two women. I invent a lot of things. For me, the most important thing is how what made these two women decide to risk, the discovery of one of them being a woman married to another woman, how they manage, how they survive, how their love survived to the mockery, the prison, the everything. So I wrote the script, and several financiers, producers, they were very interested in it. One of the first, I think I put it in the first page, is like, this is a story. This is based in a true story, but this is an interpretation of the true story. And of course, the film is in black and white. I wrote the script. The people were interesting. Every time they realized the story was in black and white, it was like, also, this is a period piece, a period piece. If you're trying to make a low budget film, don't make a period piece, because, there's a lot of details, like, you will spend a lot of money, like erasing, like, electricity cables and lots of things who doesn't belong to that era. That's that's my advice. But we're supposed to start a film with, let's say, a 4.5 million euros, and well, these things happen, and suddenly, the financier, they decide to invest their money in another film, and I keep searching for people who finance this film. I had these two actresses, Natalia de Molina and Greta Fernandez, who were very enthusiastic about making the film. I started talking to them like 4 years before making the film, and from time to time they call me. So is there any news? Like, we're gonna do the film or not? And I was like, we're gonna do the film, even if it's with a Super 8 camera. We're gonna do the film. And also I start, I realized we will never have the, let's say, the normal production. So I start, trying to find ways to express what I want to express, but without, okay, we will have like 1 day with extras, but not 2 days. So, okay, we'll manage. We were never able to go to the real places like Lisbon and Argentina. Okay, we'll do everything in Spain. We do everything in between Barcelona and Galicia. And but there was still like no much interest in the movie. And then it was one of the beginning of Netflix in Spain, and they show interest in the film. They say they want it in color, and I insist on the black and white. And I guess I cannot be sure of that, but I guess I'm sure of that. They put less money because in black and white, but they decide to put some money in the film. And also I insist, I want at least the film on in cinemas in Spain. And they, after months of negotiations, like, they agree on that. And we did the film with less. It was less of €1 million, but for the period film, with I think it's pretty reasonable, and we can consider it low budget. I know you will say, yeah, but a 50K is low budget. Yeah, I know. And And we shoot it in 3 weeks and a half. The DP was Jennifer Cox. It was her first film as a DP. It's someone I met, and someone I met when she did her first short film, and I think she's someone really, really, really talented, and she helped me a lot in developing, this poetic black and white of the film, shooting like scenes who were like kind of metaphoric, and I think it really helped the film to express what the love, the passion between these two women. And we did the film with a very, very small crew, and I have to say it was probably all female crew. Maybe almost 90% of the crew were women. And because we had to shoot like very intimate scenes between the actresses, and from a very pragmatic point of view, I think it's better. I think also actresses, they have to feel protected, and they have to feel safe, but in order to be free to do what they have to do. And it was, I think, the commitment of Natalia and Greta was amazing. They really became very close, and they became this couple in the film. And for me, having them and having their support was key in to make the film. And one of the things I remember not making the film, after we make the film, we submitted to the Berlin Film Festival, and they accepted. And one of the strangest things in my life was when we went to Berlin. There was all these German distributors like protesting because it was a Netflix film, and they were saying this is not a film for the Berlin Film Festival because we have to be against Netflix. Of course, 1 year after, half of the films in all festivals in the world, they have Apple, they have Amazon, they have Netflix, in the HBO, in the credits, and nobody says a thing. But our little film was one of the first to suffer, one of the only ones to feel, to suffer the fury of German distributors. And even if I talk to them and I insist, the film is going to be in the screens in Spain. Why don't you put it in the screens in Germany? And they refused. Well, that's the story of making a film. In a film also, I have to say one of the things who really helped me, who was key from Netflix to accept the film in black and white, was Roma of Cuarón. But that's a lesson you learn. Like, you have to defend what you want for your film. If it's black and white, or if it's half in black and white, half in color, why not? And you have to tell yourself a lot, why not? And one of and I know, for one of the most touching things of making this film was also like, the moment it was in Netflix, I get letters from people especially from girls, also boys too, from, all countries in the world, like, Indonesia, Jordan, even the Arab countries, saying, this film showed me, what I feel is not wrong. What I feel is legit. What I feel is it's bigger than life, and I'm very, very, for me, that has been a lesson, because sometimes you think, and I said, I don't try to make films like the most important things in mankind, but you realize the power of a film, who says, okay, these two women were in love and they have this crazy idea about getting married. And me personally, I'm against marriage, but I will fight for anyone who wants to get married. And also they risk their lives for their love, and that's very, very rare. And when people from all over the world, even in countries where gay marriage is forbidden, they send me these incredible letters saying how important that film was in their lives. And it's one of the things I treasure, because also you realize, films are powerful. And films, I don't say, I'm not I don't say films change lives, but they help you to shape your life. They really help you. And I know I'm the product of course, my gender, my education, my background, my class, but also I'm a product of all the books I read, all the films I've seen, and all the experiences I have, and all the conversations I have with random people on the street. But films are up there. And I would like to, I guess the people who are listening to me now are people thinking of making a film, and let me tell you, it's a great experience. And it's not just a great experience because you're developing your vision and you're fighting for your vision and you're making a film. Think of a film also as an adventure with people who are there to help you. One of the things also for me who is really important is surround yourself with people who are, even if smarter than you, people who really believe in you. And even when sometimes you will not believe in yourself. Oh my God, I know I'm sounding like one of those coaches, but it's true. And I learned that, and I my life, I spend more time behind a camera than most people in the world, and I still love it. And I still sometimes, you are in a movie set, with thousands of people, or with just you, the DP and someone bringing coffee. And I, I stopped for a minute and I said, wow, this is great. No, this is a great job. This is really an amazing job. And I want you to think of making a film as an adventure. In an adventure, you have to start with passion, and it's amazing. Believe me, it's amazing, and that's why I keep doing it.
That's why we keep making films, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We have a couple of questions in the chat, actually referring to Elisa y Marcela, questions in English and Spanish. So I'm going to read some of the Spanish questions. Voy a leer algunas preguntas. Acá están apareciendo debajo. Hola, Isabel. ¿Cuánto tiempo te llevó el periodo de investigación antes de tener la idea final de la película? How long was the process, the investigation process before having the final idea for the film? You can answer in español.
Vale. La primera idea la tuve, o sea, el primer impulso para hacer la película fue cuando vi la foto de la boda de estas dos mujeres. Era como, fue algo como, no sé, como un satori, ¿no? Esto que llaman los japoneses una iluminación. Y he tenido esas cosas antes de hacer varias de mis películas, ¿no? Ver una imagen, ver una expresión, ver algo que me dice, quiero hacer una película sobre esto. Cuando vi esa fotografía, realmente quise hacer la película. No me preguntes por qué, no sé, tuve un pálpito, pero luego estuve recorriendo todos los lugares donde ellas estuvieron, hablando con investigadores, sobre todo con Narciso de Gabriel, que es la persona que más sabe del tema, este catedrático de Historia de la Universidad de Santiago. Y yo creo que fueron como 2 años de ver papeles, hemeroteca. Durante ese periodo, además, leí todas las novelas que se habían escrito sobre ellas, siempre en tono de burlarse de ellas. Eran novelas escritas incluso por grandes escritores gallegos como Emilia Pardo Bazán, que es una gran escritora, pero que escribió una novela realmente satírica y muy burlona y muy fea sobre ellas.
Wow. Ok, por acá seguimos con este mismo usuario que pregunta ¿cuál consideras que fue una de las escenas más complicadas de grabar de la película? What was one of the most difficult scenes?
La escena más complicada fue, lo tengo muy claro, fue la escena cuando la policía llega con el cura. Es la escena con Natalia de Molina, que llegan a la casa de ellas y quieren desnudarla para quitarle los pantalones para ver qué clase de genitales tiene. Esa escena fue complicadísima. Natalia, recuerdo que es una de las escenas que ella temía más y yo también. La estuvimos preparando mucho, pero fue, de alguna manera, claro, describir algo tan violento y hacerlo lo más realista que pudimos fue duro, ¿no? Y yo, no sé, me sentí... Siempre, evidentemente, yo tengo un sentimiento protector, ¿no? con los actores y con las actrices, pero ahí me sentí como mucho más superprotectora, porque yo sabía además que para Natalia ella temía hacer esta secuencia, ¿no? Y bueno, lo tomamos con mucha calma. Yo le dije, bueno, en el momento que tú sientas que estamos, pues que no quieres seguir con esto, porque al final es una escena de violación, ¿no?
Es muy difícil de ver esa escena.
Dime cuándo, porque claro, además es una escena doblemente complicada, ¿no? Porque ¿de qué estamos hablando? Estamos hablando de sexo, género, genitales. Hay muchas capas en esa escena, ¿no? Y yo lo único que le dije es, Natalia, cuando no quieras seguir, paras y ya está, ¿no? Todos los actores, siempre de mis películas, hay una cosa que para mí es importante. Si estamos rodando una escena jodida por lo que sea y quieres parar, oye, esto de quién dice acción y quién dice corte, me parece que se puede trabajar de una manera mucho más humana y yo entiendo que alguien está... Yo no quiero que nadie sufra. Hay un nivel de sufrimiento que nunca se debe traspasar, aunque el resultado da igual. O sea, yo creo que no tenemos que arriesgar pues la salud mental de nadie. Y es algo que tengo siempre muy en cuenta.
Hablando de los actores, speaking of actors, we have a Cuban actress in the chat, Camila Arteche, es una actriz cubana, nos agradece y te pregunta cuál es el proceso para elegir a tus actores y actrices independientemente de que cada proyecto tenga sus especificidades. ¿Hay algo en particular que siempre tengas en cuenta? Is there anything in the process of selecting actors that you are always looking for?
¿Qué es lo que busca uno en un actor, no? Es algo que de verdad que me lo pregunto, ¿no? Yo sufro mucho en los castings. Sufro mucho porque veo el esfuerzo, veo la pasión, veo la entrega con que cada actor viene con su idea de cómo tiene que ser, tal, ¿no? Yo siempre les digo a los actores, no es real. Y además es verdad, no es porque tú lo hayas hecho de una manera mal o bien, ¿no? Lo que uno busca en un actor, lo que yo busco al menos, es una especie de verdad que me habla a mí. No pretendo que esta verdad sea universal. A veces, pues, mucha gente y hablo, o sea, yo he rechazado en casting a actrices muy conocidas, muy, muy, muy conocidas, porque aunque lo hacían bien, pero no era lo que yo buscaba, ¿no? Yo quizá busco muchas veces la imperfección, no busco, no busco, a mí me gusta que las cosas no queden en el aire, no terminen. Busco siempre no sé, busco una asimetría incluso emocional, ¿no? Creo que muchas veces hay actores que me parece que son muy buenos, pero que a mí no me dicen nada porque busco otra cosa, ¿no? Incluso en cuestiones de belleza. Creo que a mí me gustan las caras asimétricas, ¿no? Y una de mis grandes amigas es Rosy de Palma y siempre pienso, tengo que escribir algo para ella, porque tiene la cara más, para mí, más bella y más asimétrica del mundo. Entonces, claro, a mí lo que me parece bello es eso, ¿no? Entonces, claro, pero yo sé que para un actor es muy duro ir a un casting sin saber qué busca el director, porque muchas veces el director tampoco sabe lo que busca. Lo que pasa es que cuando lo ves, lo sientes.
Esto de la simetría me recuerda a Mark Ruffalo
There you go.
sí, en Mi vida sin mí. Otra de tus películas que también recomiendo muchísimo que vean, si no la han visto. My Life Without Me. Ok, tenemos otra pregunta. Hi there, Carolina from USA. How did crew size create stylistic limitations from lack of extra crew versus more freedom and speed in shooting? What was the crew size?
In Elisa and Marcela, the crew size, I guess we were like the 10, 12 people. In some locations, we have more, but, when we have, let's say, there are 2 scenes with kind of a bunch of extras, and then we have people helping to dress, because also, in a period film, you have to have all these costumes made. And I have to say, one of the I love the way, Marce Paloma, the costume designer, really, she worked with nothing, and she created all these dresses were amazing. And, in the moment these women, in the prison, they have these things she made with things she found in the garbage. We had the prison scene. Sometimes, for instance, in this last film I've done, Three Goodbyes, it was a film made in Italy. I have to say the crew was amazing, but we were 50, 60 people. And sometimes for me, since I really like improvised things, when you have such a big crew, it's very difficult to improvise, very difficult. And sometimes you feel a little suffocated by with so many people and so many assistants. And for me, the best situation is when you have a small crew of a very good people and very devoted and very aware and very present. Like, you don't have to have a lot of experience or a lot of care. You have to, people who know how to do things, improve things without being, intrusive. And that's a key.
Yeah, surround yourself with your people. It doesn't have to be many. Okay, Princess Susanga is asking, how did you choose what to comprise or cut from the original vision of your film?
In Elisa and Marcela, as I told you, this is a story who happened in Galicia, Portugal, and Argentina. I You know, I knew from the moment, the financing was falling, I knew we couldn't shoot in Argentina and we could not do it in Portugal. So, I tried to find landscapes who were like, let's say, who remind, a little bit of the real landscapes, no? Sometimes I laugh when I see, the ending in Argentina, because it's a landscape who's just 1 hour from where I live in Barcelona. So, but I try to to do the maximum with what I have, and that's, I guess that's the key. Also, you realize sometimes one of the characters of my film says, not Melissa and Marcela. In the bookshop, there is this character saying, understanding everything makes the mind lazy. And this is something I always remember. This is something Penelope Fitzgerald wrote, because sometimes you have the tendency to explain everything, and okay, why this person act, in Elisa y Marcela, for instance, why the father is so, we have the actor who played the father is a very good Spanish actor. We have him for 2 days, no? And we had a scene in the original script, like, who was very clear about, they have a fuck up relationship, a fuck up incest/incest relationship. And we didn't have time. But then I put the accent in the moment where, she wants to send a girl to Madrid, and her reaction, and it was, it was raining and we have mud, and then I said, okay, then you act a very violent way against her, and you throw her in the mud, and I think in that moment you can think they, he had, they have a sexual relationship, and maybe that was, I don't know, maybe that was better than showing in a more graphic way. That's my way of working. If we can, we have this actor for 2 days, let's do everything, and let's choose carefully the things we do.
Yeah, I think it's always like coming back to the core of your story, like whatever you actually want. Like there's something in the story that you're not willing to change whatsoever, and that's what really needs to remain in this like process of cutting out, I guess. So thank you, Isabel. Thank you to all who have joined. I do wanted to ask one last question, and this is general, and I guess you have received this question like many times, and this like piece of advice, something that hasn't been asked in the chat, or something that you really want to share with first-time filmmakers working on their first micro-budget film with only $50,000.
First of all, be really aware of that money. Put that money in the most important things, in the core and the essence and the most essential film things you want to share, and choose carefully your crew, and don't one advice, don't send someone to Starbucks to buy lattes. Just forget about that. Have your coffee at home, and be humble, and treat your, the people who's going to help you to do that. Treat them well, like with respect. Listen to them. Maybe maybe they have good ideas. Maybe they, you can use them, their ideas, and have fun. Really, it's I know we filmmakers, we try to be like, oh my God, my film, my life, but Yeah, okay. We're drama queens, and but be 5 minutes of a drama queen a day. It's enough. The rest, have fun. That's my big advice.
Great. That's great. I'm going to listen to that for sure. Thank you so much again, Isabel. Gracias, gracias, gracias. Ha sido un placer tenerte.
And thanks to everybody. And
Yeah.
yes.
And to everybody, go watch Elisa y Marcela on Netflix. Things I Never Told You, which I love. Y por supuesto, Tres Adioses, Three Goodbyes, which is the latest one and it's really beautiful. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And to all of you, I just want to remind you that our cinematic residency open call will start on June 1st. So get your scripts ready. You need at least 30 pages of your script, and apply. The application is really simple, and you can get $50,000 to complete your first micro-budget film. And you can get additional support towards the production of the film, mentorship and professional development opportunities, and also a studio to work. So apply on starting June 1st to July 31st. And I just wanted to remind you again that our films are ready to stream at many platforms. You can watch Mountains, Ludi, Febrero, in Movie, Prime Video, Vimeo, On Demand. And we also have Sunnyland on Prime Video, Fallen Fruit on Tubi, and The Old Man and the Parrot by Gabe de Varona right now, currently in film festivals. Again, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And see you again.